Grace to you and peace from the one who was, who is, and who is to come. Amen. Today we encounter John the Baptist yet again, but in a different light, as you will see in this reading. Because the question that the religious authorities were asking him when they said, "Who are you?" They were questioning his authority. Who is this guy way out in the middle of nowhere that people were flocking to hear, to be baptized by? Who is this guy screaming out in the wilderness that people were listening to? And by what authority did he preach? By what authority did he baptize? And what I find really most interesting about this exchange between the priests and the Levites from Jerusalem who made their way out into the desert to investigate what this guy was doing was that they didn't condemn him. I find that really, they were just wondering what's going on. There isn't any condemnation in their words. They just ask, "Who are you?" And of course, John says right away, "I am not the Messiah." He knows who he is. And then they say, "Are you then Elijah?" And he says, "Well, no, I'm not." And then they said, "Well, then who are you? What are you doing?" "I am the voice of one crying out in the wilderness," John says. And of course, they say that this is the prophet Isaiah's words. And they would have immediately understood the context. When the prophet Isaiah said, "I am the one crying out in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord," they would have remembered that time when they were in exile and they were wondering where God was with them. Because they were in exile with the Babylonians. And they say, "Make straight the way of the Lord." They were talking about a road. And the Babylonians were making the Israelites create a road that would be used for worship of the Babylonian god Marduk. And so when they were making this road, it was a direct affront to their faith. It was idolatry. They were participating in idolatry. And so when they cried out to God, "Save us," and when Isaiah says, "I am the voice crying out in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord," he was contrasting between the road that led to idolatry and the road that led to God. And so John was invoking that memory, that story which was etched within them. Make straight the way of the Lord. But then they asked a very legitimate question. They said, "Well, then if you're not the Messiah, nor Elijah, nor a prophet, then why are you baptizing people?" But of course, John knew what was going on, and he just said, "I baptize with water." Like, this is something that people did. This was actually a Jewish ritual. We think that baptism is a distinctly Christian thing, but no, our Jewish friends started this beforehand, as we know from John, who was an observant Jew. It says, "I baptize you with water. Among you stands one whom you do not know, the one who is coming after me. I am not worthy to untie the thong of his sandal." And of course, he's talking about Jesus and the baptism that Jesus gives us. But John here is playing a very specific role. He is playing the role of Elijah. That's why they asked him if he was Elijah, and he said no. But he's being a little disingenuous because he's not Elijah, but he's playing that role. The role of Elijah is to announce the coming of the Messiah. And that's what he's doing. He's announcing that the Messiah, the Anointed One, God's child, is among us. It's a proclamation that the people were waiting for. And he didn't just come out and say it. He declared it among you. This is here. This is happening. Look around you. So that's why he says, "I am the voice crying out in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord." The way of the Lord, the way to God, is among you. The way to God is here. The road that leads to God is in front of our feet. And so when he says, make straight the way of the Lord, he is directing us to that road. And that road is Jesus. So when they're asking, who are you? By what authority are you doing this? He really answers, by Jesus' authority, by God's authority. Look around you. Look who is among you. The Messiah is here. The Messiah is among you. And with baptism, more importantly, the Messiah is within you. And I think that's an important message this Advent season, to remember the Messiah is in front of us, the Messiah is among us, and the Messiah is within us. And the Messiah is Jesus. And in this Advent, and in this crazy Advent, this Advent of lockdown, this Advent of COVID, this seemingly unending Advent, which I talked about last Wednesday, this Advent of waiting, of anticipation, this is also a time when we know that the Christ child will come. We know that Jesus will be among us because Jesus is already among us. Because in Advent, we say that we're waiting for Christ to come among us, but we also know that Christ is already with us. He's here already, he's here not yet. That's the liturgical framework which we talk about. And for me, I cling to that for hope. I cling to that trusting that tomorrow will be a better day. I cling to that hope, believing in the God who says that he will make all things new. Because I trust in that promise. In this dark Advent season that seems like the night is endless, light is coming, as we heard from the beginning of this passage. When they said there was a man sent from God whose name was John, he came as a witness to testify to the light so that all might believe through him. He himself was not the light, but he came to testify to the light. And of course, that light is Jesus. That light that is Jesus, that is within you, that is within me, that is around us. So that light gives us hope, it gives us courage, and it gives us strength. And then to share that light with those who need it, to share that hope, to share that courage, to share that strength with those who are just about to give up, who are struggling during this dark Advent season and are looking for that light. Our job as Christians is to bear witness to that light, to share that light, to give that light until it expands throughout the world. And then everyone will know that Jesus is that light. And may this be so among us. Amen.